I think I am live. I'm gonna see once a couple people jump on, make sure you can hear me and see me okay. I'm just pre-melting my Isomalt and make sure that is all good to go. Let's see, I have my iPad set up down here, so I'm just going to... Okay, I think I am live. I'm live? Okay, cool. Can anybody see me, hear me okay? Let me know right in the comments. I just want to make sure before we get started, everything technical is going good. How's everybody doing today? You guys doing good? Oh, I see a couple people jumping on here. I just have my iPad set up right below my phone so I can see everybody's comments a little bit easier. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm looking at, is reading your comments. So just let me know in the comments that you can hear me and see me all right. Let's see. Bev is so excited to begin working with Isomalt. I am so excited too. Hi. Let's see. We got Marla. Awesome, awesome. Everything's working okay. Volume's good. You can hear and see me. Thank you so much. Awesome, awesome. Okay, I am so excited. How are you guys doing today? All right. Let's see. Oh, good. We got a couple people on. Fantastic. I'm just making sure my Isomalt is all preheated here. Perfect. All right. Carol says, hello, Simi family. Hello, Carol. Awesome. Yay, Lynn is here. Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. I'll go ahead and get started. I'm super excited to be here. For anybody that I don't know, I'm Sidney Galpern. I'm the owner of SimiCakes.com. I specialize in Isomalt, pulled, cast, and blown sugar. So that is what I'm going to be showing you today, is how to make some awesome window cookies and tons of tips and tricks to getting it all crystal clear and all of that fun stuff. But I've been doing Isomalt and cake decorating and sugar techniques for about 13 years, and by far my favorite medium is Isomalt. So I'm super, super excited to show you guys. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to Kyla and the whole Capital Confectioners and That Takes the Cake crew for putting this on. I've had such a fun day so far already, watching all the demonstrations, and I can't wait to watch the next ones. I think that this is such a great idea because I know that me, like most of us, are missing all of our cake shows and our days of sharing and our classes and everything. So this is a really, really great idea, I think, to just be able to kind of interact with each other and see each other and you know, learn a lot. So I'm super excited to be here, and I'm very honored to have been invited to be one of the demonstrators. So I am going to be doing an Isomalt project, as I said today. This is going to be a hands-on project. Of course, you're welcome to just watch. You can ask as many questions as you'd like. But if you want to follow along, if you got the goodie bag for the day of sharing, then you do have a lot of the tools and things, and I put out my supply list as well. If you want to go back and watch this and make the project later, I have the supply list posted, but you can also, you know, get it with the kit and things like that, and that is just going to be some of the tools and things that you'll need to follow along, so you are welcome to follow along. I'm going to be kind of going a little bit slower so that anybody who wants to follow along with me hands-on can stop and ask questions, and I'll be kind of pausing, seeing how you guys are doing. So please let me know if you guys are planning to make this piece along with me. I would absolutely love it, and send me updates throughout the demo because I would love to see it. If you have any questions, please write them in the chat. I will be happy to answer as many questions as you guys have. I have my iPad set up down here right below me so that when I turn the camera down, I'll be able to see all your comments. Sometimes I get sucked into working and I forget to look up, so I'm also going to have Mom here in just a couple minutes. She's going to come in and read off the comments too, so if you have any questions while I'm working, you are welcome to write them in, and she will keep an eye on that, and she will let me know, or she'll write back. So yeah, I'm super, super excited. It looks like everybody else is excited, which is awesome. I think this is going to be so much fun. So I'm going to be showing you two different cookies today. We're going to be talking all about different ways that you can make window cookies. So we're going to be making a shaker cookie, and we're also going to be making a window cookie. But the shaker cookie, I have a little twist on it because I actually made a cool shaker game where you can use dragees and sprinkles to kind of, you know, play the game, which I'm going to show you in a second. But I will hold up my cookies for you guys to see. So this is the first one. Since we are doing a games theme, I thought that Mario would be perfect. I love Mario. I grew up playing Mario Brothers, so I thought that this would be really fun. So you can see it's a Isomalt transfer sheet on the back. I'm going to be showing you how I get this brick texture really easily, and then I'm also going to be showing you guys this shaker window cookie. So this one is with an icing image, and you can kind of see, it's obviously gravity is not helping me right now, but you can kind of see the little dragees. The little dots that are on the mushroom's head are are indents that you can actually play. So when you shake this, you can get the dragees into the little holes. Do you guys remember those games, the little discs where you had to tilt it to get all of the little, you know, dots and the little spheres into the holes? I was obsessed with those. So I thought it'd be really fun to make a sugar version. And I know that clients would absolutely get a kick out of trying to get all of the little sprinkles into their spots. So yeah, I'm going to show you guys how to do that, how to use transfer sheets, and how to get crystal clear Isomalt and all of that fun stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera down so that you guys can see what I'm doing as we start. And again, if you have any questions, Mom just got here too, so she will be reading out any comments that I may have missed as I'm working, so please ask as many questions as you like. And of course, if you're watching the replay of this, you can always message me questions as well, and I'll be happy to answer. Okay, so give me 1 second, and I will turn you guys down to the table. Okay, so I'm just going to turn it here. Okay, so just bear with me for 1 moment while I get everything kind of set up. I want to make sure that you guys are straight and not crooked and you can see everything. Let me go up a little bit more. Alright, there's a slight lag on my iPad, so it's just taking me a second to make sure that everything is all straight and put together. Let's see, let's go this way just a tiny bit. Okay, I think that should be good. Let me just catch up here, make sure that you are all semi-straight. I'm going to move over this way just slightly. Otherwise that will bother me if it's crooked the whole time. Okay, perfect. Alright, so these are our cookies that we're going to be making. You can see them a little bit better excuse me, on the white. And so you can see our cool window shaker cookie. This is like that dexterity puzzle, they call them. So you can kind of tilt, and I have been playing with this ever since I made it, and it is so much fun. And you can get the little dragees to fit into the little indents in there, but I will not make you guys watch me do that for half an hour, because I will do that. But this is our window cookie, which you can see a little bit better on the white. And yeah, I'm super duper excited to show you guys how to make these. So first off, I'm going to talk a little bit about Isomalt. So Isomalt is a sugar-free hard candy. So it's basically like a sugar-free lollipop. So basically, all you have to do is melt it down. I'm going to see if I have a bag of Isomalt that I can show you guys. Here, Mom's gonna grab one really quick. So basically, if you get a powdered Isomalt, so if you are not as familiar with Isomalt, all Isomalt starts out in a raw form. So the raw Isomalt is going to be a powder. It can be raw Isomalt, it can be Isomalt crystals is what it's called. And so basically, it is going to have to be tempered and cooked. So the tempered Isomalt is going to be the hard candy form that you're probably familiar with, that beautiful crystal clear or pre-colored Isomalt. Thank you. So I'm just going to show you guys, this is our pearl Isomalt. We just grabbed the closest one here, but so that one is not as crystal clear, obviously, as the clear, but you can see that beautiful pearlescent sheen. Once it's in the hard candy form, then you can just melt it down. You don't have to worry about temperatures or recipes or anything. All you have to do is melt it in the microwave for about 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals until it's a liquid. So again, it's super, super easy at this point. You can choose to either get it from the raw and cook it yourself, but it is a tempering process. It can be a little bit tricky and take some time, so a lot of people don't like to do that. They just want to have the Isomalt already pre-done and ready to go. So that is why we're going to use the pre-cooked. But if you're interested in learning more about cooking it yourself, I have my whole recipe listed for free on my website, so all you have to do is melt it down. Again, this is the pearl, not the one that we're going to be using today, but you guys get the idea. When it's already in the hard candy form, you don't have to worry about temperatures or anything. We're just going to pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals until it's a liquid. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we are going to pour our little molds, because they're not going to take very long to dry. And so, oh, here I can show you guys the clear, thank you. So that's the clear compared to the pearl. That's the one that we're going to be using today. And yeah, so I'm just going to melt it down. I've pre-melted it a little bit just for some time, but basically we're going to bring it to a boil. So I'm going to grab my Isomalt from the microwave. Perfect. Now this has been sitting there for a minute, so it has come to a boil. And then I've let it settle. So when you're melting your Isomalt, you want to make sure that you bring it to that nice boil. It is bubbling, but it's not going to be poured right away, because if your Isomalt is boiling and bubbling and you pour it, you're just going to be pouring bubbles into your mold or into your cookies. So you don't want to pour it right away. Now this has been sitting, like I said, in the microwave for a couple minutes since before I started when I was preheating it, but if you've just heated it at first, again 30 seconds and then 15-second intervals until it's a liquid. Then you always want to let it settle until it's flat. So you can see that now that it's settled, I usually take it out of the microwave to do that, so I take it out when it's boiling and let it just chill out at room temperature for a couple minutes. But you see how it's super duper liquidy, but it's not actively boiling and bubbling anymore. That's good because you don't want to pour any of the bubbles into your piece. That's one of the most popular questions I get with Isomalt is how do you get rid of bubbles? And there's a couple different ways that you can do that, especially for window cookies. That's going to be important. So I'm just going to make sure that I do that as well as not stirring it. So stirring the Isomalt is going to mix in air, so I don't stir the Isomalt unless I'm mixing in color or flavoring. And so if you have to mix it to stir in those colors and flavors, you obviously want to re-boil it because hot air rises, so any air that you had stirred in will boil itself out, and if you let it settle like I was just talking about, you basically can just kind of boil all of the air out that you may have gotten in. But if it's already the color and the flavor that you, want it to be, then you can just pop it in the microwave and you don't have to poke at it or stir it. It's not like chocolate that needs that agitation, so all you have to do is melt it down. Now, if you want to color this or flavor this, you can. So the flavorings that I would use is an oil-based flavoring because they're super duper concentrated, so it's going to not take very much, and therefore it won't dilute the Isomalt texture too much by adding in more liquid. So it just takes a couple drops. Remember not to taste test it while it's liquid and hot. Just, kind of pour a little mold or pour some out on a silicone mat and let it cool, and then you can taste test it to see if you want to vary the flavor any. But yeah, you can do that. And then if you wanted to color it, obviously we're just going to use clear so that it takes on the colors of our patterns that we're going to be using. But if you wanted to color the Isomalt for other projects, what we're going to do is mix in either a liquid airbrush color, so that's a water or alcohol based color, or you can mix in a powdered color, so like a luster dust or petal dust. Now keep in mind that airbrush colors are going to be a transparent color, so it's going to be a see-through color, whereas powdered colors are going to give you an opaque effect, so it's actually going to be solid and more like a porcelain look rather than a see-through look. And of course luster dust will give you a shimmery look like I was showing you with the pearl before. So you have different options as far as different finishes, but today we're just going to be using that clear. Now I know some people can be intimidated by working with Isomalt, especially if you're new to it, because it is quite hot. Isomalt is about 300 degrees, so you don't want to stick your finger in it. That's 300 degrees Fahrenheit, about 150 degrees Celsius, so it is quite hot. You want to make sure that you're wearing your gloves. I recommend a cotton glove first and then like a nitrile glove over it, or that's mostly if you're going to be doing pulling and things like that. For this, at least just wear those blue gloves, those nitrile gloves, and that will make sure that if any were to get on you, you have that barrier between you, because we're not actually going to be touching the Isomalt today for this project, we're just pouring it. But still be very careful. You guys make cakes and you bake, right? You cook, so you work with ovens and stoves every single day. Those are way hotter than 300 degrees, so just be cautious, wear your gloves, don't stick your finger in it, everything will be good, I promise. Okay, so again, if anybody has questions, let me know, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to my next step, which is going to be pouring my molds. So it's okay if you are still melting, or if you, aren't exactly on the same pace as I am. I'm going to kind of stop and explain things and things like that to give anybody any catch-up time, but remember, this is a project for you. I put out my supply list with the kits, and we had a lot of the supplies within your goodie bags, so, you can see what I'm using, but you don't have to do everything as I'm doing it. You can vary this, you can use different paints, you can use different colors, you can vary it to what you want, because this is your project, so don't feel rushed. Just go at your own pace. You can watch as you are making your piece so that you know what to do next. If you haven't quite got to the next step, it's totally fine, but I can't wait to see. Make sure if you are making these pieces that you definitely post pictures and tag me, because I would absolutely love to see it, and tag That Cake Takes the Cake too, because I know that they would love to see it too. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pour our molds now. Okay, the best part about Isomalt is if it gets too thick, you can reheat it. So this is a pretty big bowl that I'm using of Isomalt, so it's stayed nice and warm. But if it ever gets too cool at any point, you can just pop it back in the microwave and remelt it, which is really, really nice. Now we are going to prep our molds. Now normally I know I don't do anything to silicone molds because they're silicone. You don't have to. It'll just release right out. You don't have to grease it or powder it. But with these molds, you'll notice our cute little gamer molds, our little Mario molds. We have the little mushroom and the little star. These have very, very tiny details. So the details of the eyes and the little dots on the mushroom, those are very, very fine. And so what will happen is when you pour the molds, it will, sometimes air can kind of stick and breathe from the silicone and you can get air bubbles across the top of your piece. So if you want to eliminate that, generally what I do for more defined molds is I would, after they cool and come out of the mold, I would lightly torch over the surface of them and melt away any bubbles. But because those edges are so fine and those details are so fine, we don't want to torch over them because then it'll melt all the detail and you'll just have a smooth mushroom shape and a smooth star shape without the eyes and everything. So I am actually going to take a little bit of cooking spray and I'm going to prep these. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use a little paper towel just so I don't get it everywhere. I'm going to grab a flat brush here, and I'm just going to spray a little bit of cooking spray onto the paintbrush and paint it into the mold.
Sidney, Jalen would like to know what is the type of bowl you're using?
I am using the silicone bowls. These ones are from Pampered Chef. So I have the 3 different sizes in this kit, and they just came out with another smaller set of silicone bowls as well, which are really, really nice. Alright, so see how I'm just kind of digging it into all of the grooves and the crevices. I don't like to spray the oil right into the mold because I don't want to accidentally fill up any of the cavities and get a whole bunch of excess oil in there. I'm just going to paint it in with the paintbrush and kind of poke it into all the crevices. Okay, and that will eliminate some of the bubbles. You may get 1 or 2, but it will at least take away the majority of them so that it's going to look a lot smoother in the end and it's going to be easier to paint on top of. Alright, and now all we're going to do is we're going to pour the molds. So I'm going to use my silicone bowl. The easiest way to hold the bowl is going to be to take your hands on the top lip on either side and then pour towards you. Okay, you don't want to try and grab it from the side down here, especially with silicone bowls, because they're going to be very soft and very hot as well, and you don't want to risk squishing it onto your hand. So I'm going to pour away from me because I think it'll be a little bit easier for you guys to see, but I recommend pouring towards you so you can see what you're doing. So I'm just going to go right from the middle and slowly fill it up. Now don't worry about filling every crack and crevice. If the very points of the stars don't fill, we can spread that in. Okay. With more detailed molds, it's easier to spread it in than it is to try and over pour it and then accidentally overflow. So I'm just going to use my toothpick now before it cools, and I'm going to spread it into any crevices it may not have filled out. Don't worry about rough edges, or if you do accidentally overflow it, it's very easy to clean up once it's cool because we can use the torch and we can use the scissors even if we had to trim off some excess. So I just filled it in, okay, so you can see that all the Isomalt is filled in there, and now I'm going to lightly torch over the back just to eliminate any bubbles that may be on the surface. I think my torch is right behind you. I was just using it a second ago for a project I was working on, so it's just off to the side. I'm going to have Mom grab that for me. Thank you.
There you go.
Alright, so I'm just going to lightly torch over the surface of my liquid Isomalt to pop any bubbles, because again, hot air rises, so it's just going to rise to the top. I'm going to lightly torch, and you may not even see anything happening, but if there's any tiny little bubbles, they are going to pop from the torch. So what will happen is you want to pop those now because it's liquid, and if any bubbles pop, then it will just fill back over flat because it's liquid. So if you do this later, so let's say we're torching lightly over it later when it's cool, and you accidentally pop a bubble that you didn't see was there, it is going to pop, but there's no liquid to fill it back over, and it can create little craters.
All right, Bev is asking, how long do you have before the Isomalt cools when you cannot manipulate it with the toothpick?
It depends on a couple different variables. It depends on the temperature of your room, so it depends on how cold the room is. Obviously, it will affect how fast it cools. It also depends on how much Isomalt that you are working with. So the bigger the bowl, the more you have in the bowl, the more heat it will hold, so you have longer. If you're melting just a tiny, tiny amount, it will not stay hot as long. But it also depends on the Isomalt. When you initially temper the Isomalt, the longer that you, or the higher temperature that you cook it to initially when it's being tempered, the faster it dries. With my recipe, I cook it to the very lowest possible temperature. That way you have a lot of time to work with it. So you can see, I think it's been about 10, maybe even 15 minutes since I started, and that's when I heated this. And this is still very, very liquidy. But the molds that I just poured, because there's not as much in it, are not very liquidy anymore at all. They're still quite pliable, but if I were to poke at them, but they're not really liquid anymore. So it kind of varies, but I would say you have a good like 5 to 10 minutes in the bowl before it is going to harden, and then in the mold it's going to start hardening quite quickly because the mold is cool and the ice mold is coming in contact with it. So if you want to do one at a time, pour one and spread, and then pour one and spread, that may be a little bit easier for you. And as you work with it too, you're going to get a feel for it in your environment of how fast it's going to cool. Okay, and worst comes to worst, the best part is you can remelt Isomalt, like I said, so all you have to do is throw it back in the bowl, remelt it, and there's no limit to how many times you can do that. So you can do something over and over. Luckily, these to cool all the way down are only going to take about 5 or 10 minutes. So if you really didn't like it, you can pop it back in the bowl and redo it as many times as you want, and it never goes bad, so there's no limit to how many times you can do that. Okay. All right, so how's everybody doing? You got your molds poured. I'm going to move on to our cookies next, so no rush, but if you feel like your ice malt got too thick when you're done pouring, you can pop it back in the microwave for either 30 seconds or 15 seconds, depending on how much you want to melt it, but I think that mine will be pretty good, so I'm going to leave it as is, and I'm going to grab my cookies. So you can get your cookies out, and you can get your transfer sheet and icing sheet out if you had the accessory kit.
That takes the cake. Someone here at the show would like to know what brand of torch you're using.
This is the torch from my website, from simicakes.com. It's the one you can get alone, or it comes in our Isomalt Basics kit as well. I really like it because the safety lock is just once. You don't have to hit it every single time, so I can unlock it and just keep hitting it as many times as I want. I really like this new version. It's super easy to use.
And probably Make It Sweet has some too as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Make It Sweet has it. It's just like a creme brulee torch. Works super well. Okay, so I'm just unwrapping my cookies that I baked here. And we're going to pour those next. All right. So if you guys got the kits, you will have your cookies. Of course, when you're using your own cookies, you can use whatever type of cookie that you want. I've used a whole bunch of different recipes and I've never had a problem. I've used other artists' cookies that they baked and I've never had a problem. So you can use your own recipes as long as they are baked and cooled. You can use pretty much any cookie. I've never ran into an issue with that. So what I'm using for mine personally is my sculpted and construction gingerbread recipe that I have. It's on my page or on my website, and it's just a really hard cookie because these are going to be display cookies, so I don't need anybody to eat them. They're still very edible, but they're a little bit more on the firm side just so that they are going to hold up longer and I can save these. But you can use any kind of cookies that you want to. The nice part is, I mean, if you're making these for a client, I basically would tell them that it's a lollipop with a cookie border, so it's a really nice treat. You know, but of course a lot of these are just going to be saved and they want to keep them and, you know, play with them and display them. So, all right. I may pop my Isomalt in the microwave just for another 30 seconds, just because I've been talking a lot and it cooled them back down a little bit too much. Okay. We are going to be pouring our cookies. I'm going to be pouring my cookies on this non-stick Teflon mat. If you don't have this, I know a lot of my students already have these, or you may have a variation of these. It's just like a coated baking mat, and the Isomalt won't stick to it. But if you don't have this, it's no big deal. Just take a piece of aluminum foil and spray it with the cooking spray. So just take a little bit of Pam or any kind of spray oil that doesn't have the baking powder in it. It has to be just pure oil, and spray the piece of foil and then wipe it off with a paper towel just so that it's a nice thin coat. So if you don't have the Teflon mat, you don't have to necessarily have that. You can just use aluminum foil. It works really good.
I believe Capital Confectionery made all those cookies, and Jalen's saying they smell so good.
Do they smell good? That's awesome. That's the best part about working with cookies, really.
They worked so hard.
They did. They worked so hard to make all of those cookies for every single kit. Okay, we're going to grab out our sheets now as well. So if you want to grab your window design and your mushroom design, you'll notice that there is a difference in the two designs as far as what paper they're on. So the mushroom design is just on a traditional icing sheet. This is an Icing Images. They're just their regular premium icing sheets. It's nice and flexible, and that is what we're going to be using for the dexterity cookie, the shaker cookie, so that it has an opaque background. I wanted it to pop a little bit more so you could see the sprinkles on top, so that's why I'm using the icing sheets. So this is, again, just a regular icing sheet, and you can pour on whatever you like, but I know that this one's not going to melt or anything from the heat of Isomalt. So that's going to go under one of our window cookies, okay? So I'm just going to center that as best as I can upside down here. And then the other round cookie, we're actually going to flip over. So whichever one you want your top cookie to be, you're going to flip that over and we're going to pour the front of it. And the reason for this is we have pretty thick cookies and we want to have a gap between them. Sometimes I'll do 3 layers of cookie, so I'll actually do an empty cookie in the middle and then another layer of Isomalt filled cookie on top, so it gives you an even bigger gap. It kind of depends on how big your sprinkles are. But because these sprinkles aren't going to be very big, we're just going to do the 2 layers, but we are going to flip one of the cookies so that when we pour, we're not going to fill all the way up to the top of this cookie. We're just going to fill in enough to cover the bottom, and that is going to give us a small gap in the cookie itself, plus the other small gap that's going to be in this cookie. So when we're filling them, make sure that you don't fill it all the way to the top if you don't have to, just enough to cover the bottom. Okay, and then the third cookie for the stained glass window is going to be on our Isomalt transfer sheet. So the Isomalt transfer sheet is going to be a type of icing paper as well. I developed this with icing images too, and but it's very, very thin. You can see that it's very delicate. It would actually scratch off with your finger if you were to scratch it, and so it's specifically made to transfer with the heat, and the heat of Isomalt is going to be really, really perfect for this. So it's going to absorb into the paper, and it's going to kind of make this design even more translucent. You can see it's a little bit translucent right now, but when the Isomalt absorbs in, it really makes it pop. So I'm just going to put this underneath my sheet, but I'm going to put it so that the matte side is up. The shiny side on the other side should be down. That's the plastic backing it's on. If you pour on that, you're just going to have a beautiful clear window, but you want the pattern to transfer. So the matte side is up, shiny side is down towards the matte, and you can cut this apart if you want, or you can just pour one because it will only transfer where the design is. So I'm just going to line that up, and then that is what I'm going to pour over. Okay, so I grab my Isomalt. Again, I brought it to a boil, but it had settled in the microwave. Again, if your Isomalt is boiling, all you have to do is just let it cool at room temperature until the bubbles stop moving.
Judy says, she cut her mushroom out, but I don't think that's a big deal, is it?
No, that's not a big deal at all. You'll just have a clear border around it, and you'll have that, like, mushroom in the center. I actually think that would look really cool. So make sure to send me a picture, because I'd love to see the variation of that. Again, this is you guys' cookies, so they don't have to look exactly like this one.
Oh, that'll look neat.
Yeah, I think it'll look awesome. Okay, so I just reheated my Isomalt. It was still, I had some bubbles that were moving in it, so I'm going to give it just a minute before I pour. Especially when you're working with edible sheets, I want to make sure that I'm not pouring it too hot because you could potentially break down the sheet a little bit if you're pouring it boiling hot. So I always make sure that it's a little thicker rather than a little bit too hot when I pour, because it's going to give you the best results. Okay, so again, we have one of the round cookies on the icing sheet, just face up. We have an upside down empty cookie, which would be right on your Teflon mat or right on your greased piece of foil. And then you have the transfer sheet with the matte side up that's inside your window shaped cookie. You don't have to pour these two on the piece of foil because they have backings on them, so it's not going to go through, again, as long as you don't pour it too hot. It's not, as long as it's not boiling. So you don't have to put these on a greased piece of foil. If you don't want to, you could, but they're not necessary. It's really just for this one. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and pour my cookies. Again, I'm not filling it all the way up to the top if I don't have to. I'm just going to pour enough to cover the bottom and then leave a small gap at the top so that my sprinkles can fit.
Sid, Bev would like to know what icing sheets you're using.
The regular one is the premium icing sheets from icingimages.com, the thick one, and then the thin ones are the Simi Isomalt transfer sheets. Now these are also from Icing Images. You can get blank ones that you can print on yourself if you have an edible printer, or we have a lot of pre-printed designs for the things that I design in my projects on our website too. Okay, so I'm just going to start in the middle. Now when I pour, I try and pour in one spot and then let it run out. I don't pour a whole bunch of lines and let them all run together because you could trap air pockets between two puddles if they meet up, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to pour in one spot. I can guide it, but I'm not going to go past the edge of the Isomalt.
Okay, edge of the Isomalt or the cookie?
The edge of the Isomalt so it doesn't get air pockets trapped between it.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm also not going to pour past the edge of the cookie. There we go. So I'm just kind of letting it run in, and again, you may get some bubbles, but we can clear those away in a minute. And then I'm going to pour onto my transfer sheet as well. so see how I'm just pouring just enough, and then I'm going to pour just enough to cover the bottom on my middle cookie. There we go. And then I give that a minute, and then I will pop any bubbles that may have risen to the surface. Sometimes it does take a minute because hot air rises, so I will pop them once now, and then if I notice that any more kind of collect, I will pop it again in like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, whenever I notice them. As long as you keep the torch moving, you shouldn't hurt the cookie. Just don't stop in one place, but I'm just doing it very lightly. There we go. Alright, and then I'm going to let those cool, so I'm just going to slide them out of the way. You may get some bubbles on that icing sheet or even on the clear one, but we can get those clear the bubbles away from the clear one in just a little while. Alright. But really, bubbles aren't a huge deal because it kind of adds to the whimsy of the piece, I think, because this is supposed to be really fun and whimsical, so it's not a huge deal. I am going to put, just for time's sake, I'm going to put my little battery-operated fan just lightly blowing over my cookies, just so that for you guys, we have them cool enough to decorate and everything once we are ready for them, but I'm just going to go ahead and let those cool. Alright, so how's you guys doing? Is everybody pouring their cookies? You working on your molds? Let me know. Our little molds should be cool in just a minute, so I'm going to take those out. And then we're going to get our paints ready too, because we're going to paint these while the window cookies are cooling. So if you want to go ahead and get your edible paints out that you're going to be using, we're going to use those in just a sec. I'm going to be using petal dust, which I'll talk about in a second, but you can use whatever kind of edible paints that you like.
Sidney, Jalen would like to know where you got that fan.
The fan is actually, here in Florida, we have hurricane preparedness boxes.
Well.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other states have those as well. Originally, I stole that out of the hurricane preparedness box, so this is, I've since replaced it, it's fine. But I use basically hurricane fans. They're very easy to get here in Florida. They're just little battery-operated fans. You can get them at Walmart, Amazon. This one is, Treva is what the brand is, but you can really just use any little fan, or you can just put it under a draft. If you have one table in your kitchen or counter in your kitchen that's really drafty, you can definitely just use that too. Okay? Or you don't have to cool it at all. You can just let it cool an extra 5 minutes and be patient, unlike me. Okay, so when you are ready to take your molded pieces out, you don't want to test them with your finger just in case they were still too warm. So you take a toothpick or a tool or something and just tap on them. This is just one of my silicone tools, but you can use your toothpick. This one was just closer to grab. And you just want to make sure that there's no warmth to them. There's no, it's not making a dent or anything. And then we'll just flex the mold and it should just pop right out.
Uh-oh. Monty said when the Isomalt was added to the mushroom, it started peeling and breaking apart.
Oh no, it could be that it was just a little bit too hot when you poured it. Sometimes that can happen if it hasn't cooled down enough. But you may be able to go back and kind of paint over it too, or you could even lay a new picture on top of it, like another icing image on top of it.
It'll look very vintagey because all the
It
ones
will.
you look at online.
That's
look
true.
So vintagey.
Yeah, they do look very vintagey.
And Jalen wants to know, what is this patience you speak of?
I think that's a cake decorator, sugar artist trait to not have patience. Maybe just an artist trait in general. So you can see how pretty and clear those molds came out. I only have a couple little bubbles, which I'm not going to worry about because we're about to paint it, so we're going to cover those up. But I really like how that oil just kind of took away a lot of the, the bubbliness on the surface of it.
Bev would like to know, did you already put the holes in for the dexterity puzzle?
No, we didn't. We're going to imprint those after the Isomalt is cool. So I put the dots there in the image just to give you a guide of where they're going to go, but we're going to put the dots in after it cools down completely.
And Leah would like to know, can you put the Isomalt in the fridge to cool?
I don't like to put Isomalt in the fridge or the freezer to cool it down because the moisture and condensation will make it really sticky. So I just let it cool at room temperature, or if I need to rush it, I'd use the fan. So any Isomalt pieces, if your cake is refrigerated, try and put them on after the cake comes out at the last minute before it would be delivered or served. Okay.
So those look just like lollipops to me.
They do, right? So that's another thing that you can do is you could just take these, you could dip and stick a lollipop stick to the back of them, so just dip it in Isomalt and stick it to the back, not in your hand, stick it down here, and then let it cool, and you can have cute little pops too. These would look perfect on like cupcakes and everything too, so if you're not a cookie person necessarily, you can bury this, put them on cakes, whatever you want.
And they work for fondant and gum paste, everything,
Yeah,
chocolate?
yeah, definitely. There's silicone molds, so you can pour chocolate in these, you can use modeling chocolate, fondant, gum paste, gelatin, deco gel, anything. Okay, if you do have any rough edges around the outside, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I have some little just like roughness around the edges of my molds. I'm just gonna clear that away by putting the molded pieces face down, so I'm putting them face down on the mat so all the detail is hidden, and I'm gonna lightly torch around the edges, so just keeping my torch moving very lightly. Building up the heat. You can always do more, but you can't take it away.
Mm-hmm. Jalen wants to know if there's any adverse effects to eating Isomalt.
Isomalt is basically a sugar-free hard candy. So just like with any sugar-free hard candy, you don't want to eat a ton of it. I usually say like a lollipop or a cupcake topper size is totally fine. Isomalt doesn't let fats absorb into your body. So if you eat too much of it, it doesn't let anything absorb into your body and things can kind of slide through you. But, I mean, that's true with anything. You know, Isomalt, of course, but you wouldn't want to eat an entire, sugar topper either. That's definitely not going to be good for you. So as long as you just have, one serving size, you'll be totally fine.
And these are more for the decoration part, right?
Yeah, these are definitely more decoration, so they're generally going to be saved or they're going to be taken off. Okay, so you see how that just smoothed over any rough edges that I had on the backs of the pieces, and then I will be ready to paint. So I'm going to grab a paper towel and just lay them on there, and I'm going to grab my paints. Okay, just so I don't get any paint on my silicone mat. So I'm going to grab my paint palette as well as my paints. Now again, you can use whatever paints that you have, but I really like using powdered colors with things like this because I'm layering so many colors, it's not going to bleed onto each other as much, and it's going to grip the Isomalt a lot better and dry faster. So, but again, you can do whatever you would like. If you want to switch this up with gel colors or airbrushing or whatever you want to do, it's just, I find it a lot easier. Another trick that you can do if you want to just thicken your liquid colors, like your airbrush colors or your diluted gel colors, is you can add in powder to them. So if you had like a yellow airbrush color, you can just add a little bit of either yellow or white powdered like petal dust, and it will thicken it slightly so that it paints on a little bit denser and has more body to it. So the first color that I'm going to be using, we'll start with the Star. This is just what I'm using again, but you can use anything you want. This is Sunflower from the Sugar Art, one of their elite colors. And I'm just going to take a small flat brush, and I'm going to mix this with some alcohol. You can use vodka or Everclear, whatever you prefer.
Joanne was sharing that it's a better choice for diabetics because it doesn't spike your blood sugar, correct?
Yes, exactly. Isomalt doesn't spike your blood sugar in any way, so if you have a client that can't have sugar especially, it's really, really nice because they can still eat it.
And it's quite good.
It is. It tastes really good. I mean, unflavored Isomalt just is basically sweet. Just has a sweet flavor, but you can mix in those flavorings and it works great. Okay, so I just mix that with a little bit of alcohol, and I'm just going to paint over the whole thing. And painting on Isomalt is really, really good because it catches all of the light. Sometimes on transparent pieces, it can get a little bit lost, some of the details. So when you paint it, it's really going to help to catch the light nicely. So I'm just doing kind of a fairly thick coat, and then I'm going to let it dry before I layer colors, which is why I like to mix it with alcohol for things like this, because it's going to dry pretty fast. So I'm going to let that dry so that the color doesn't bleed when I layer another color on top of it. Okay, and so I'm going to put away my yellow, and I'm going to grab my red. So this one is Poppy from the Sugar Art. All of these are going to be from the Sugar Art because that's my favorite color brand. I'm just going to use the same brush, but you can use a new brush if you want, but yellow goes to red very easily. I like to keep my paints a little thicker, so I'm not adding a whole bunch of liquid into it. It's more powder than, too much liquid. Now we're not going to paint the face of the mushroom because that has more of like a light flesh tone color to it, more like a pale yellow or a brownish color. So I'm just going to be painting over the areas that is going to be kind of the mushroom cap, and then we'll go back and paint the white on top of it once it's dry. If you want to try and avoid the white sections, you can, but because we're working with powdered colors, or at least I'm working with powdered colors, they are opaque, so it's going to paint over pretty easily. I'm going to grab a slightly smaller brush. Just go around that big circle, but the other ones I'm not going to worry too much about. You may have to do a couple coats because Isomalt's not porous like gum paste and fondant. It's not going to absorb paint. It really just sits on top. So because it's so smooth, sometimes you just got to give it one layer so that it gets something to stick to, and then the next layers will paint on even smoother. Another trick if you're working on a transparent piece like this is that you can paint the back of it as well, and that will make it even more opaque.
Oh, that's just what Kelly asked. Are you painting the back or the front?
I'm painting the front, the textured side, but you can absolutely paint on the back of it if you want to. Just to kind of make it slightly more opaque, but if you want to leave a slightly glassy finish, you may want to leave it.
Joanne was also replying to Leah and said about cooling it in the fridge. If it cools too quickly, like the freezer could crack.
Yes, Isomalt is very temperature sensitive, so just like glass, if it goes from really hot to really cold or vice versa, it could crack. So you don't want to have it too extreme. That's why the fan is nice, because it's very subtle. Let's see, so now I'm just grabbing a little bit of white, and I'm going to mix in a teeny tiny bit of orange into it to make the light flesh tone color. Just a teeny tiny bit, so I just dipped my brush in the orange. I'm going to mix those together, so it's basically just like a pale peach color.
Malika says she's getting Isomalt all over everything.
That's okay, you're allowed. Some of the best pieces come from making a mess, right?
Laughing, crying face.
Isomalt is water soluble, so if you get it on your clothes, it will wash out in the washer. If you get it on your tools, just soak them, it will all come off.
Just don't get it on you.
Yeah, as long as it's not on you, that's the most important part. Okay, so I'm going to take this pale orange color and just paint it over the face of the mushroom. And again, you may have to do a couple coats. Okay. Then I'm going to let that guy dry while I paint on the eyes for the star. Okay, so I'll show you what I have so far up close. There is our mushroom and our star. I think the star is dry enough, we'll see. But it should be good. And you may notice that they dry a little bit matte from the alcohol, but when you glaze them later, which we're going to be spraying it with an edible glaze just to make sure they don't get sticky or cloudy from humidity, that is really going to help to kind of lock it in and make it a lot brighter and shinier as well. Okay, so now I'm going to take some black, so the color that I'm using is Turkish black from the Sugar Art, and I'm just going to mix in a tiny bit of alcohol. I'm going to use, let me find an even tinier brush over here.
Jalen would like to know any first aid tips for Isomalt.
You just want to make sure you put it under cool water, not cold water, like any burn, and you want to make sure that you don't peel the Isomalt off right away because you don't want to take your skin with it, so you just want to let it run under the water until it dissolves.
Like a little lidocaine.
Yeah, you can put some lidocaine on it. Just protect it. Don't pop your blisters. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit more powder to this black because I want it to be pretty thick to lessen the chance of it running. The more watery your paint is, the more it's going to want to run, so.
Victoria wanted to know what was your edible glaze and where can she get it?
It is a clear edible glaze spray. I have it here. I can show you guys. This is the one that I use, but you can use any clear edible glaze spray. I'm sure that Make It Sweet has it.
In all the local stores, anywhere you are.
Yeah, exactly. Your local cake decorating store should have this. You can get it online as well, but it's just a clear edible glaze spray. Okay. So, we'll see if I was patient enough for my black not to bleed into the yellow here. But again, I'm not taking very much on my brush so that there's not a lot of liquid there to run, and I made it very thick so that it's not going to be too runny. Oh, there we go.
Angelica's wondering about jewels. What would you recommend to make them more reflective on the back of the stones?
You have some different options because you can get different effects depending on what you use. On the backs of the stones, you could paint some luster dust. You can paint silver or pearl or gold or whatever color you wanted to, and that will kind of shine through the clear Isomalt. That works really well. You can also put edible glitter on the back, and so you could paint like piping gel and then dip it in the edible glitter, and that way it sparkles through it. But if you wanted it to be super reflective, you could either use a silver leaf or you can just use foil if they're going to be removed. Obviously you can't eat foil, so don't use foil if it's going to be eaten, but you can use a silver leaf if you want to. Okay, so there's our little star, And when I glaze it, it'll go a little bit more even. Let me turn it because I forgot you guys are upside down. There's our little star. And I left mine a little bit transparent, but if I had painted the back of that piece, it would be even more opaque. I just kind of like the reflection of the light, especially when we glaze it. It's going to make it a little bit more smoothed over so that the color looks more even. But you can see how you can just start with clear. You don't necessarily have to, you know, have all these different colors of Isomalt to use it. You can just paint on top of it. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the mushroom. So just using a fine brush and painting on the little details. And of course, you're welcome to customize these however you want. This is just how I'm doing it. And then I will take a little bit of white, so let me close the black powder so I don't get it everywhere. And then I'll take a little bit of that pure white petal dust and I will paint on for the polka dots on the mushroom.
Super cute.
I love hand painting, so I could spend forever doing this, but I'm not going to spend too long. If you also really love hand painting, of course you can get more into shading. You could add highlights if you want, but I'm just going to do kind of a simple effect since these are really just decorations. They're not the focal point of the designs on the inside. But this would be a good way to incorporate Isomalt into the other cookies, so this could kind of be your display cookie, and then you can have just the little molds, you know, on cookies around it if you wanted something slightly more edible.
Blanca is wondering, how far in advance could you make the cookies out of Isomalt for the party?
It depends on your humidity level and if you are sealing them, which you should be, but I generally say that Isomalt's going to look the best within the first week of making it. So the closer you can make it, the better, but at least a week, or at most a week in advance.
Well, those are pretty old and they still look good, but
They
you wouldn't want
do.
to eat them.
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't want to eat these because they have been around a while, but I made these probably a month ago or so, and you can see, I mean, they still look super duper shiny. They're the ones in the picture, so. Okay. Now, because I didn't leave the outside dots without the red, they got a little bit pink. So I would let this dry and then do another layer of the white on top just to cover that up, but at least that was a good base color, and I think that they look super duper cute. Again, if you were making a whole bunch of these, it may be faster to just use red and yellow Isomalt to pour it and then just paint on the little details. That's totally fine, but you know, it gives you different options because everybody's different in what they prefer to do. You may not like hand painting, you may love hand painting, you know, whatever you're going to be fastest at gives you some different options. Okay, put these guys off to the side. Pick up all of my paints. Alright, I'm just gonna take a minute here to clean up my mat to make sure that I don't get any paint on my clear cookies. Okay, so I'm just gonna use a little bit of alcohol. And then we will check on our window cookies. How you guys doing? Any other questions? Okay. Make sure my hands don't have any paint on them when I touch everything. Okay, that should be good. Alright. So, I'm going to now grab my cookies, pull these over, and we're going to release them. So again, don't touch it with your finger, just in case. Use a tool or a toothpick to tap on each and every one of them. Make sure that they're not making a dent, and then we can go ahead and release them. So I'll start with our stained glass window. Basically, the transfer sheet will just fall off, so I'm just going to peel it away. And you see how there's no trimming, there's no cutting out or anything. It just falls right off, and then the other design wasn't touched, so you can save that if you want to make another one. And look at that, it just made it so much more transparent and bright, especially when you put it down against the white. Of course, this has a texture, so it makes it a little bit busy, but if you just put it on a nice white background, it looks really, really bright and pretty. So that is our first window cookie. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my icing sheet cookie. Okay, so this one you are going to have to peel away some of the excess, but first I'm going to peel the backing away So that plastic backing it's on, I'm just going to peel that. And then you can use an X-Acto knife, you can use scissors, whatever you want, to just kind of peel and cut away some of this excess. It's up to you. You can also trace the cookie first before we did this, and then just have a circle that fits underneath. So I would just put the empty cookie on top, trace it, and cut it out first, but either way is fine. I'm just going to cut around the cookie, kind of bending it back so I cut slightly under the edge of the cookie so you can't see it. Okay. There we go. These excess pieces, you could keep them and, you know, shred them up for confetti or something like that, or you can just toss them. Alright, and there is our Mario cookie. So you can see the paper on the back of it is all good and stuck on there, and we didn't have to do any super specific cutting or trimming or anything like that. Okay, so there's our 2 designed cookies.
Judy's laughing. She goes, "What excess?"
You don't have to have excess. Alright, so let's see, I'm going to switch here. Alright. And then we're going to take off our third cookie, our window cookie that's just clear. I had some bubbles on mine, and that's totally fine. I did that on purpose to show you guys how to get them away in case you got bubbles. I find that these can sometimes get more bubbles than the foil, just because it has more nooks and crannies to catch. But if you could have bubbles on either, I want to show you guys how to fix it. So I'm just going to peel this away first. Now, if you're using a mat like this, or even with the foil, you could have some crinkles or some texture on the surface, so we need to get that away anyway. Okay, so I'm going to use the torch, but we should have a slight gap in here from where we poured it, and that will be perfect when we put it on top of our other cookie once we clear that away to trap our sprinkles. But I'm just going to torch this. So when I torch this, I want to make sure that I'm not doing too much at once, because there is that gap underneath. There's space. And what is gravity going to do with space? It's going to fill it. So if I get this too warm and too pliable by heating too much at once, it's going to sink. So I'm going to lightly torch, and then I'm going to flip it over and let it cool. And then once it cools down enough and holds its shape, I can flip it back over. So I'm just going to do very, very, very light layers. Mostly this first one's just going to get the texture away and just start on the bubbles, and then I'm going to immediately, not touching the Isomalt, I'm going to flip it. Oh, I missed a spot. There we go. I'm going to flip it and let it cool. You can even use your little fan, even though the underneath shouldn't really be too hot. It's just the surface, but at least it helps. You can use the fan to slightly cool it down. That way, if it does want to sink, it sinks flat because it was poured like this, right? So it's flat on the back or on the underneath, and it's just going to retain its shape, if that makes sense. So light layers is key, and letting it cool down in between. From here on out, it's already been warmed, so if you heat on top of something that's already warm, it takes the heat a lot easier, and it's more going to want to fall more quickly and get more pliable more quickly. So it's really important to practice our patience skills. I'm telling myself this as much as you guys, and we're really just going to take our time to make nice, beautiful, transparent windows. Okay. Sometimes you have to peel the mat away from the piece rather than the piece away from the mat, so that because this is flexible but the cookie's not. There we go. So now I'm going to heat again, and you'll see the bubbles get smaller. They may not go away, but again, we're going in light layers. And it could take a couple layers. I mean, depending on how heavy-handed you are with the torch, it could take 5-10 layers, but you know, it's better than having a warped cookie. Okay.
Sidney, Beth would like to know, to do like a snow globe look inside the Isomalt window, how would you go about with having a picture as well?
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. You can do a pretty like snow globe background, and then you can put some edible snow inside. You can put some pretty snow sprinkles. I have a video that I did a snow globe on my IGTV on Instagram, so you can see that how I did that. I basically just did the same thing, but I used a snow globe cutter instead, and layered some pretty like snowflake sprinkles inside. That would be super, super pretty.
Just instead of the dragées, you mean?
Yeah, instead of the dragées, I just used some small, like sprinkly sprinkles, like sparkly ones, and then I used some small snowflakes inside. Okay, so I'm just going to do my third layer. Flip it. I'm almost there. You can see there's really only just a couple bubbles in a line left, so if you guys have any questions, this is a great time for it. That way it distracts me from not wanting to rush it too. Right, so just cooling, 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 and then we are going to decorate after this. So I'm going to show you how a really, really easy way to get the brick texture, and we're going to do some painting, and then we get to put it all together. So as we're waiting to cool, if you want to get your fondant out or your sprinkles ready or anything like that, if you got the accessory kit, you absolutely can use the sprinkles that came with it, but you can also use whatever sprinkles that you would like to.
Angelica would like to know, how do you deal with the humidity?
So dealing with the humidity, there's a couple key things. Based in Florida. The Simi Isomalt's manufactured in Florida, so it is kind of used to the humidity, and we've tailored our recipe to it with this. But another thing is just going to be spraying it with the glaze. So I was talking about this earlier, but the clear edible glaze spray is really your best friend. We're going to be spraying the inside and the outside of these pieces because you want to make sure that the inside doesn't get cloudy either. So this is really going to be your best friend with keeping humidity away. It will just lock out the moisture and keep your pieces shiny. Like I said before, this cookie I made over a month ago, and it's been here in my studio in Florida, and it's not gotten cloudy or sticky or anything. So that glaze is really important.
Well, Malika said that I have success. Woo woo!
Yay! I'm so excited.
Okay, and Kelly wonders if she poured it too thick. How much of a gap should there be on both pieces?
It depends on how big your sprinkles are. So you want it just big enough to hold your sprinkles. If it's not big enough to hold your sprinkles, you may want to try and use smaller sprinkles, or you can just turn it into a shaker cookie instead. Or you can add a third cookie as well into it. So you can, kind of bump it up that way. You could even just add a filler of like a ring of fondant or gum paste in between so that just bumps it up slightly, just so that you have kind of that in-between spot. But it just comes with practice. You could even make your cookies thicker if you keep having a problem with that if you're making them.
I always pour everything super thick.
Yeah, you'll find too as you work that if you're more heavy-handed or more light-handed, Mom tends to do, more of things and I tend to do way less of things. So I know when I'm doing something, if I think it's done, I need to double it or I need to do more because I'm too light-handed, and then, when I look back on it, I think, oh, well, I could have done more. So you'll find out kind of your groove of making your pieces and what's going to work with your style too. Alright, so just cooling. I think I'll only have one more layering of heating to do after this, and then we get to start decorating and putting it together. What I'm going to do while this one's cooling actually is I am going to spray the top of this underneath cookie. So I'm going to just take it off to the side and spray it with some edible glaze, and that way it has a couple minutes to dry before I start putting it together. We're going to want to spray the inside of this cookie as well, but I'll work on the other cookie while we're waiting for it. And so basically, I'm just going to give it one light coat. Don't worry about getting it on the cookie itself. Now, these won't be overly sticky. If you don't have the glaze, it's okay. You will still be able to use them, depending on your humidity level, for a little while. You'll still be able to have the sprinkles move around, but sometimes they can get stuck. Another alternative is you can use a little bit of cooking spray or cooking oil just rubbed onto the surface. It will help with the stickiness, but it won't necessarily help with the cloudiness. So if you're just going to take pictures of it right away and eat it, or whatever you're going to do with it, it's fine if you don't have the glaze, but if you have it, I would say go ahead and give it a spray.
Somebody said if they want to do it again, where can they get the file? But I think you just Googled it, right? Off of the internet?
Yeah,
so they could do that as well.
Yeah, I just used some cute Mario designs I found, and I just customized them a little bit to make them my own.
And when do we indent the mushroom?
We're going to indent the mushroom after it's all put together. So actually, if you don't want to glaze that before you put the indents in, you don't have to. You can glaze it after. It's okay if you did, because we can just burn off the glaze. But we're going to indent it before we put it together. Okay, so I'm going to torch one more time, and then I'm going to put this off to the side to cool really well. Okay, so I'm just going to let that cool, and now we're going to start putting everything together. So what we'll do first is I'll go ahead and I will put the indents into our cookie. So it's okay that I glazed it. I can glaze it again if I need to. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a toothpick, and you want to cut it in half, and that's what we're going to use to make the indents. I tried a whole bunch of different methods with this when I was doing it. I tried ball tools and things, and honestly, the best thing that worked was the toothpick. So we're going to cut it in half so that we have a more blunt side. And of course,
wasn't that in the kit?
Yes, this is in the kit. It should already be cut in half, or you can use another one if you need a new one, or if you didn't have the kit. And so basically we're just going to indent this. Of course, it depends on how big your sprinkles are, though. If you have bigger sprinkles, you're going to want you to use like a ball tool or something like that to imprint it bigger. Okay, and all we're going to do is we're going to torch on each of these spots. We're going to let it cool a little bit, and then we're going to indent it. If you touch this to it right away, it's going to stick because you just blowtorched it. So we're going to let it sit for a minute after we dent, and I'm going to do these one at a time. So I'm turning my torch down pretty low. I am heating pretty well. Okay, so it's almost like melting the surface. And if you didn't heat enough the first time when you try and poke at it, you can do it again. You'll just kind of get a feel for how much you need to heat. Giving it about 10 or 15 seconds before I touch it so that this doesn't stick. Okay, and then I'm just going to press and kind of twist it. And that's going to help it from sticking, but it's also going to just help it stay nice and round. So right over that dot, I just put that indent, and it may look a little rough, but you can lightly torch over it and it will smooth it out. Not so much that you get rid of the dent. You don't want to just smooth it back over, but you can do it again if you need to. Okay, and then I'm just going to do that for each one. Give it those few seconds. And then just make that indent. There we go. If you're doing a different design and you weren't quite sure where you wanted the dots, you can just put your dots in and then paint them if you wanted to. I don't think I torched quite enough for that one, so I'm going to torch a little more. Give it those 10 seconds. And then indent. Alright. And then I'm just going to very lightly torch over these just in case there was any roughness. But now I have my indents into the inside that I know that my sprinkles are going to fit. Alright, now I'm going to reglaze this as well as glazing the other inside of the cookie so that I can have it not stick or anything like that. I'm just going to give my other cookie one more little layer of torching off to the side here.
Jayla wants to know what if one gets their toothpick stuck.
If you get your toothpick stuck, try and twist it and it should come off a little bit easier. You don't really want to torch over it because you don't want to burn the toothpick, but you may have to do just a tiny bit to kind of loosen it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and glaze my cookie really quick off to the side, and then we're going to get our fondant ready. So if you'd like to get your fondant out, you can use brown fondant, chocolate fondant. You can dye the silver fondant that came with the kit, the goodie bag.
Nice. Put the brown fondant in, I think.
Oh, did they? Okay, awesome. Oh, that's right. Yeah, so you can just use the fondant that came in your goodie bag. Alright. And then I'm going to spray this one too, just for good measure, but you can also spray it after the fondant is decorated.
Jalen says she has flames.
You have flames? Good flames or bad flames?
I think on the toothpick.
Oh, on the toothpick. Okay, we'll just blow it out. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and do my other cookie as well on the inside.
She's having fun and safely laughing.
Okay, good. As long as it's safely. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my brown fondant. I'm going to be working on a plastic mat because I don't want to get grease on my silicone mat, and plus I can cut on this one too, so I'm just going to put that over top of my work area.
That takes the cake. Said if you don't have a torch to make the indents, an aim of flame works, and someone was using the long lighter from the grill.
Oh yeah, that would work too.
They used that down in the island. She couldn't get a torch.
There you go. See, there's always a way that you can customize it to what you have. Alright, so I'm just gonna knead my fondant, get it all ready. I might nuke it in the microwave for a minute. This is the chocolate fondant from Satin Ice. Nice dark chocolatey fondant.
Can you show the spray?
The glaze?
One more time? Yes, please.
That is the glaze I'm using. PME Clear Edible Glaze Spray.
Jalen says learning with friends is always fun.
It is, right? That's the best part about these, that we can kind of still do that together, but while all being safe and distanced.
And Jalen said, what about the pen tool? that you demonstrated.
Yep.
Would that work?
Absolutely. You could use, there's a bunch of ball tools that come with it, or the Ziotto heat pen. If you haven't seen it, it's basically like an food safe heat engraver. So you could absolutely use that too. I just didn't because I wanted to make this accessible to everybody, but if you have that, go for it. That would be awesome because you could even make like little trails in it that it follows. You can do a whole bunch of things. All right, so I'm going to roll out my fondant. You can roll it to whatever thickness you would like, depending on your fondant level that you want, but leave it fairly thick. Don't make it too paper thin because you want to make sure that it is going to have enough space to be imprinted. All right. And now you can use the template that came with the kit. I am going to use these fabulous cutters that Kyla sent me that fit right to it that they used for the cookies. So I'm going to use the cutter to cut this out, but you can use your template as well. I'm just going to cut. Okay, remove the excess before I remove the cutter because that'll give you a cleaner edge. And then peel away the center. And there we go.
I can't wait to see all these put together.
I know, I'm so excited. Please, please, if you post a picture, tag me, or even just send me a picture and tag That Takes the Cake, because we would absolutely love to see your work. That would be so much fun. All right, I'm going to use my palette knife to just loosen this. You can use a toothpick too, or anything to just kind of peel it away before you pick it up, otherwise it could stretch. You can use a spatula for this, butter knife, whatever you have. Okay, and I'm going to lay it on my cookie before I attach it because once it sticks to it, it's hard to kind of reposition. So I'm just going to lay it.
Ooh, Kyla has those available at Make It Sweet, the cutters.
Awesome, that's fantastic.
Because she made, like, you know, hundreds.
Yes.
The cutters are, where are they from? At Make It Sweet. Kyla made them.
Yeah, Kyla has them at Make It Sweet. And then you can, of course, make your own designs and just fit it to this size. You can measure it and kind of tweak it. Okay, so see how I just laid that on the cookie? And then you can use whatever you want to stick your fondant on. I'm just going to use piping gel because these are not going to be eaten. They're display cookies, but you can use icing. You could use chocolate. Chocolate may be a little bit lumpy if you don't do it quick enough, but you could. I like to, like I said, put it on the cookie first, and then I just kind of lift and paint a little bit of piping gel, and then I can lay it down exactly in the right place. Otherwise, I find if I put the piping gel on first, then I'm wrestling with unsticking it and resticking it in the right position if it doesn't go on perfect the first time.
Oh, I jumped the gun. Jayla was asking if they're available at Make It Sweet. I thought they were already available, but
oh.
we've just come up with our own.
Hint, hint. All right, so see how I just pressed that right on there. Okay, and now before it dries, I'm not going to cover my next one yet. I'm going to put the impression in it first, and then I'm going to cover the other one. So I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler. So if you have a ruler that you can use, that's what I'm going to use to make the brick impression. Super, super easy. The wider the edge of the ruler, the wider the imprints are going to be, but you can kind of tailor that to what you like. And I'm basically just going to imprint it. So I'm going to put lines, just indents all the way down horizontally, and then I'm just going to use my tool to put some lines vertically. So you can make these as wide as you want this way. Remember, the more lines that you do, the more work you have as far as painting it and filling it in later. You can measure first so that you get exact proportions as far as the width of each brick, but again, this is supposed to be whimsical, so I'm not going to stress too much about it. Okay, so I'm just putting lines. I guess I'm doing it about 1/2 inch in between each, but again, that's personal preference. You can make it wider so you don't have to paint as much.
I'm so happy Jennifer Bartos is laughing.
Alright, and then I'm just going to put some indents with my sculpting tool. You can use a toothpick for this, you can use a palette knife, you can use anything you want that has a straight edge. And I'm just going to put some indents, and I'm going to offset them. So if I make an indent here, I'm going to imagine how wide this brick is. So if it maybe ends here and here, I'm going to put the next row in between those, and that's a really easy way to get a quick brick. No pun intended. Okay, so see how I went right in the middle, and then I'll kind of line the next row up with the first one that I did. So I'm basically just alternating. And then I'm going to go probably about here. And you can do every other one if you want to go a little faster. Okay.
Jalen can't wait to do Christmas windows. Don't you have a video on the gingerbread house?
Yes, I do have a gingerbread house window video if you guys want to check that out.
It's on YouTube or IG?
It's on YouTube. And I did windows very similar to this, but I did them in gingerbread houses. So you can actually bake your whole wall of gingerbread and then just put all the designs underneath once it's baked and pour them all at once. Okay, so then I'm just going to keep making my brick indents. And then they're not going to look super, super dark right now, but that's why we're going to go back with some paint and just kind of re-intensify them. And there is our basic brick. So you can see it just, I mean, you could leave it like this. Again, there's different levels. You could leave it just like that and it looks awesome, or you can go back and darken it with the paint like I'm going to in a minute. It all depends on how much time you want to spend or how much time your client is paying you to spend on it. Okay, I'm going to take my clear cookie and I'm going to do it on top of this one as well. So I'm just going to roll out another bit of my fondant, mix a little bit more Crisco. I'm using vegetable shortening with this because it's a little bit on the firmer side, so I want to soften it with some of that vegetable shortening. And then I'll use my cutter.
Beth would like to know, how would you attach the windows to the cookie houses? You're not putting them in separate though, right?
We would do them in the same way. So I would use a template to cut out my walls and cut out cavities for each window. And then I would bake the cookie, and then I would lay that whole entire wall down on top of my design. So I would either cut out or, have a whole sheet positioned correctly so that it is going to kind of line up under each one, and you would just pour each window. I actually have one here that I can show you guys that I did. And I pretty much did it the same way. Okay, so I'm just going to roll out my circle cutter now.
I'm just going to set it here.
Okay, here I can show. So this is a wall that I did. This is a cookie as well, and you see how I just made the whole wall. There's some Isomalt on it. There's a whole wall of cookie, and I just made a circle cut out of it that was empty, and then I just laid that on top, and then I covered it in fondant the same way, but I used a cobblestone mat, my Simi cobblestone impression mat to impression it, and then painted it the same way we're doing this. So you can see I just poured it, but if you had multiple windows, you could pour them all at the same time with the different patterns underneath each.
And then glue it all together?
Yeah, and then you glue it all together with Isomalt. So Isomalt's a super duper strong glue, and you can glue your walls of your gingerbread house together with Isomalt, and it will not come apart like it can sometimes with chocolate and royal icing. Super duper strong. Plus it's clear, and it dries almost instantly, so you don't have to wait and prop it up and hope that it doesn't fall over in the night. Okay. So I just cut out my circle. I'm going to wrap up my excess fondant, and we will do the same pattern, first putting it onto our cookie and then adding our pattern. So I'm putting it on the side with the Isomalt is the highest, so the gap on the Isomalt is to the bottom so that it goes against the next cookie, and the side that it's flush with is to the top.
So Judy said her window shutters were closed, lol. She forgot to cut out the center.
Oh no! Well, that's okay. You can always go back and trace the Isomalt section, cut it out. Okay, if you have any rough edges, I just smooth them over with my finger, or you can use a little tool or a toothpick. There we go. Grab a little bit more piping gel. And I'll attach this on before putting that same impression onto the top. I just did these matching so that they were cohesive, but there's lots of different ways that you can vary this design-wise. You could do these in fun colors too, or you could do them like gold, so like the little gold bricks, the little power-ups in Mario. You could do these in brick, but do some of them in gold, and that would just vary it a little bit so they're not all brown. I really like the brown because it's chocolate, so it's going to taste really good, but... So I'm just kind of lifting up sections. I think I must have gotten all the way around. And then I will put my impression on. Alright. So I'm just going to make sure that's stuck on and it's nice and round before I put the impression in, because if you try and tweak it at that point, you don't want to distort any impression that you put in. And now I'll go ahead and put in my brick. So again, trying to match about 1/2 inch indents or so. But again, you can go wider, you can go smaller. That's the nice part about doing it yourself rather than using, you know, something that already has the brick to impression it, is that you can make it yourself. Okay.
So if you weren't trying to go so fast, you would just take a little more time on that little divot right there?
Yeah, definitely. I'm obviously doing this for demonstration purposes, so I'm not going quite as slow and perfect as I normally would. You can see there's still a tiny bit of beveling in my Isomalt, but I'm not going to worry about it for this. But you obviously can keep heating. You can even heat on both sides if you have a little waviness, and that will flatten it back out. But for demonstration purposes, you guys get the idea. I don't want to make you watch me perfect and do the same thing over and over. Alright, and there's my brick. Now, of course, if you wanted to, if you didn't want to do the brick by hand, there is lots of options as far as impression mats and things like that you could just press it on once and be done with it. I know we have an impression mat. There's lots of, you know, different brick impressions in different sizes that you can find, so you absolutely could do that as well, but I wanted to make sure this was accessible to everybody, so that is why I am doing it by hand. And I mean, it really didn't take that long, so if you're just doing a couple statement cookies like this and then having them you know, different ones around it, it really wouldn't take that long. Okay. And now I'm just going to take a little bit of that black that I had on my palette, find my black paintbrush here, and I'm going to paint that in the indents. So I'm going to just reanimate that with some alcohol with a thin brush and just paint the black. You could do a really dark brown too, but because this is more of a cartoony look, I'm just going to go ahead and do black and really, really exaggerate it.
What happens if you, if Monty Cassandra was saying that the chocolate fondant sticks instantly to the Isomalt, you know, if you accidentally drop it on your cookie window?
Yes, it does stick, especially if you haven't glazed it, because the Isomalt is just a little bit sticky from humidity. So you can kind of scrape it off with a palette knife or, you know, an X-Acto, and then just kind of put one of your decorations over that. So the little star and the mushroom don't have to go on the cookie, they can go on the window itself if you want to try and cover up a spot, or you can paint it to match the design underneath too and try and hide it a little bit. So I'm just kind of taking my brush, I'm not stabbing right at it, I'm using the brush to its advantage on the side because that's a wider area and it's easier to get straighter lines. And I'm being pretty generous with this black to make sure it really pops. I'm using a lot. Oh. And then I'll just go back and kind of indent in each one, and I think that that really just makes the impression pop nicely. Okay, so just paint, paint, paint on each one. And you could go back, you could highlight this in gold if you wanted to, or do like red or something funky and fun. And again, I'm just kind of going fast with it.
It does. I'm looking at it on the on my phone. You can see how good that is.
Yeah, and I like that too because even to the eye, if it looks good, I mean, your pieces are going to be photographed, right? If this is for a birthday or a wedding especially, there's going to be a lot of photographs taken of it, so you want it to look as good as possible and as nice as possible for your you know, portfolio. So I do a lot of shading on my pieces. That's one of the biggest things that I always say that I like to do with my pieces. Pretty much every single piece that you ever see me do has been shaded or just planned strategically with colors, because I just think, especially with Isomalt, but really with anything, it makes it pop. That's what I look at when I'm judging a lot, is just how much, you know, it kind of shows that little attention to detail. And because Isomalt, like I was saying before, is transparent, sometimes it just needs that little extra reflection to really make your details pop. Even if it's just some dry pearl dust, it just reflects the light so beautifully. Okay. And you see it really doesn't take very long. to get everything all to come together. All right. So I'm just about done with this cookie, and I'm gonna go ahead and start putting it together. Again, work at your own pace. You can always go back and watch the replay as you're working too. But no rush, I just want to show you for when you guys are ready for the next steps, you'll know what to do next. Okay. So now we have our 2 covered cookies. We have our uncovered cookie that's going to be on the bottom. We're going to grab our little decorations here. We're going to grab our sprinkles. I'm just going to do 3 sprinkles since I want it to coordinate with the dots. Of course, you could do as many as you want if you want to give the player a bigger chance of getting one in. Okay, I'm just going to put the 3 dots into here, the little shakers. Make sure before you put it together that there's enough space, or if you need to go and find smaller sprinkles, but I should have enough space because these are pretty small. And then to put it together, I'm going to use liquid Isomalt, so I'm just going to pop my clear back in the microwave, and I'm going to use that as glue. Like I was saying before, it's a really, really good glue because it dries almost instantly, it's super strong, and it's clear. So that's what I'm going to use. I'll probably use my little tool to spread some on, or you can use your toothpick. And I'm just going to use that to layer it together.
Judy dropped her cookie.
Oh no!
She's trying to glue the cookies together.
You can use Isomalt to glue your cookies back together. If it's just a couple little splits, what I do is I reassemble the cookie upside down. I spread glue over the cracks where it broke apart, and then if possible, you can flip your cookie, or even do it piece by piece, flip your cookie over and press it into the silicone mat, and it will flatten out the Isomalt glue, and that way you still have a flat back. I do that a lot if I accidentally break one of my cookies. Okay, so I'm just waiting for my Isomalt to reheat.
Kyla says, don't rush. They're running a presentation next, which isn't very long. So go as long as you need to.
Okay. Perfect.
It'll give Judy repair time.
There you go. Okay, so I'm just popping it back in a little bit more. Alright, make sure before you put your cookies together, remember if you're going to glaze them that you glaze the insides of both of the cookies. You can glaze the outside afterwards, but you want to make sure that the insides are glazed if you're going to glaze them. Alright, here this time I can show you guys what it looks like when it's boiling, so I'm going to let that settle before I use it. I mean, for glue it's not quite as big of a deal, but you know, just as a good rule of thumb, I always let the Isomalt settle a little bit. And then I will spread some onto the cookie to attach it. I'll also use that to attach all my decorations too. Of course, you could use, you know, piping gel if they're really lightweight. You can use royal icing, you can use chocolate, whatever you want to, but Isomalt, at least I always have it at hand, especially when I'm doing stuff like this. And again, it's going to be really, really strong. Okay, so you see how the bubbles have probably lessened about halfway, so I'm going to give it another minute or so, just at room temperature. You just want to make sure that they're not popping, they're not rising, they're not moving around. Sometimes it kind of tricks you and it looks flat, but then you move it and they start boiling again, so just kind of give it a little swirl very gently and see if they start kind of coming up again. Pick out which way you want your front and your top to be, so if you have a favorite, you know, side, if it looks better from one side or the other, you want to make sure that you have that side to the top. And remember just to kind of plan everything. Another thing that I'll do with some of my cookies is I will actually paint the edges. So since this was brown, I would take brown paint and I would paint the actual cookie part. With this I didn't do that because I didn't feel that it really needed it. The brown really tied in nicely with the color palette of the cookie, but sometimes if it's really distracting, I'll go ahead and paint the edges of the cookie, and that way it will just kind of make the cookie look more cohesive.
So Jalen, she says if the cookies are too filled, can I use a thick layer of chocolate and set the glue together with the chocolate, maybe a spacer like that?
Exactly, yeah, you can use really anything for a spacer. I would personally probably either use an extra cookie if you have one and just glue it in, or I would cut out another ring of fondant as thick as you need it and use that as a spacer in between, because that would be pretty strong but once it dries. But yeah, you could use anything.
Judy said she should have taken a picture. It looked like I dropped a drinking glass. It shattered.
Oh no. Well, I mean, salvage any pieces that you have. If they didn't have paper on them, you can remelt them, but, you know, luckily you have the knowledge, you can recreate it.
And you have good sugar skills.
Yeah, definitely.
Angelica would like to know what's the best method to clean your utensils
Just
that have Isomalt.
just soak them in water. Isomalt will dissolve in water, so if you just soak them for a couple minutes, it'll all dissolve off of the surface. Okay, this should be good now, so I'm just going to spread some onto the bottom cookie. And I'm going to very quickly put them together. I don't want to wait too long because you don't want the glue to dry. So I'm just going to put it in like 3 places. And then once you stick it, it's stuck, so you only have a second to position it, try and get it where you want. You can use a fondant smoother to push down on it if you have one so that your fingers don't make dents. But as long as you're not pushing too hard. And there we go. Okay, so I have my cookie put together. I can spend hours just playing with this and trying to get the little dragees in the holes. I have done it. I spent time when I was first making it to make sure it worked, and you can get them caught in there. It's just as hard as the real dexterity game, but it's super duper fun. And yeah, oh, there we go. See? On camera and everything. I got one in there, and then the trick is to not pop that one off with the other ones when I try and get it in. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and attach my decorations now too. I just made one of each for time's sake, but of course you can put as many as you want. I think I'm going to put the star on this one, and then the red guy on that one.
Malika said, dang it, I got fondant on my Mario Isomalt one.
Oh no. Try and kind of scrape it off with a spatula. There we go. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on the back of the pieces carefully, and then sticking them on. If you have any little strings, you can lightly torch over them, and it will melt the strings away from the glue. And then I would probably go back and give these another layer of paint so that it would just make them slightly more opaque. I can show you what that would look like since we have a couple minutes here. I think this was my yellow brush. Especially with being on a dark surface, it may just need that little extra opacity. There we go. You can even add some white because the opacity of the colors depends on how much titanium dioxide is in it or the white petal dust. That's mostly what it's made up of. So if you want it to be even more opaque from the beginning, you can mix in some white into your yellow. Just be mindful that that will change the color, of course, because you're diluting it with white, so it'll be a little bit paler. But you see how that just kind of made it. I would probably want to do this before I put the black or use just a finer brush. But you guys kind of get the idea how it'll make it pop a little bit more and look slightly more opaque.
DB would like to know, should we seal the accent mushroom and star before you?
That depends on if you want to spray your fondant or not. I did spray my fondant. I don't know if there's a huge difference on camera. There might be. I sprayed my fondant and all the accents and the top of this cookie at the same time. So I just sprayed the whole thing, and it did make it shiny. So if you can tell with the lights that the whole thing's shiny, and I think that that adds a little bit of like a animated sort of look. Since this is a video game, it has that like old school animation sort of look. So I did the whole thing, but you can spray it separately if you don't want that look. If you wanted it slightly more matte like these are, you don't have to spray it. So it just depends on the look that you're going for.
So Judy's on a mission. She's going to get it fixed.
Yay! I know you can do it.
Monty Cassandra says, I scraped off my Mario. I left the brown smear, or it left a brown smear. She lightly wiped it with a damp towel and torched the top, and you can't tell.
Yay! I'm so proud of you guys. See, it's really easy to fix any mistakes, to go back and, you know, tweak it a little bit, and I know that you guys are very crafty. You're used to working with, you know, cakes and cookies and stuff where problem solving is a whole skill in itself, right? Alright, so yeah, I have my finished cookies here. I'm going to switch this back up in just a second, but make sure that you tune in for the next demonstrations as well. Monica, Daniela, and Mitchie are all coming on next, so stay tuned. Keep refreshing the page for all of the exciting giveaways and the bingo that's going to be coming. I'm going to go ahead and switch this up, and that way I can see you guys again. Alright, maybe. There we go. Hi guys, I'm still here. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this. If you guys have any last minute questions, please ask any questions that you have. Again, if you think of any questions later, or you're recreating this project at any time, or you're watching the replay, you're welcome to always message me here on Facebook. You can message me on Instagram, you can email me, whatever you would like, and I'll be happy to answer. Does anybody have any final questions? What do you guys think? Do you guys think it was fun? Can you see using these techniques, even if you expand upon it and do different themes and things like that? Awesome, awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Fantastic. I'm just kind of waiting to make sure that there was no final questions. Let's see. Blanca says that thank you for this fun tutorial. I already have ideas. Awesome on what you're going to make next. I can't wait. Again, make sure to tag me in the pictures of these pieces because I would absolutely love to see you guys recreating this. And if you use any of these techniques that you learned in other projects or Simi Isomalt in general, please tag me on social media, either me personally or Simi Isomalt. For this project, make sure you tag That Takes the Cake as well so that they can see all of your beautiful projects. I'm super excited that they asked me to do this. I love doing hands-on demos. If you guys have been to my online playdates before that I do every month, I do a live stream like this so everybody can follow along, and it's just such a good time because we get to see each other's work, and just like in class you get that kind of feel where you can bounce ideas off each other and you can ask questions and see other people's interpretations because of course every artist is going to be different, right? So you're all going to interpret it in different ways, which I think is the best part about edible art and art in general. Alright, I don't think there's any final questions. Did you see any there? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you to Capital Confectioners and That Takes the Cake. Kyla, Jennifer, everybody, thank you so much for having me here. I had a really great time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to stay tuned for the next demos and the giveaways and bingo and all of the fun stuff. And I will see you next time. Keep life sweet, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Bye!